Okay. All right. Last time on Single Cam 2 Lab, it's been a while for you guys, so I hope you remember. We did intensity. Right? We got to go through these 6 steps to basically analyze or do any light. We went through intensity, which is how bright the light is, and how bright the light is going to look. Right? We talked about the different ways of controlling intensity. We can control the amount of electricity going into it. We can turn it up, turn it down. We can put grids in front of the camera or scrims in front of the camera, in front of the lens that will. Thank you. In front of the light that will cut down. Distance, moving the light away or moving it forward will make it brighter or dimmer. We talked about quality being how soft or hard. I gotta spit this out there. The edges of shadows are, right? And we talked about the larger the light source, the softer the light will be, which means the softer those shadows. We talked about contrast, which is the difference between the light part of your subject and the shadow part of your subject, or the key and the fill parts of your subject. All these things are things that we can control. Now, what we're getting into next is direction. And we're going to no longer work with the airy incandescent lights. We've put those away for now. You've had some experience with those. You know they're dangerous. You know how to work with them. We're not going to worry about that anymore. We're going to move to LED. We're going to start with these. Now, you remember the airy lights had numbers on them, right? The numbers told you how much electricity to use, and the numbers told you how bright or how dim they were, right? In that other case over there is a 300. Would you like to guess which one's brighter?
120.
See, that's sarcasm. I heard it. Right?
Is it the 120 guy?
No, it's the 300. I love that. Now, here's another question.
You asked it like it was going to be different.
This is a 120D. What's the D stand for?
Dim.
No.
I was going to say
Diameter.
No.
Distance.
No.
Diameter.
Nobody's got this?
Diaphragm.
Really? Daylight.
Ooh.
When we get to our next step, color, that's actually going to be pretty important. Now, if you check these lights out, one of the things you can do is find a manual, go online, look in the syllabus where I've got tutorials on how to do these, but sometimes it's fun just to see if you can figure it out. So if I pick this light up, I can't see the light. That doesn't seem like that should stay on there. There's a button right here, right? I can push that button, and I can take this cap off. You don't want to turn the light on. Now, what you'll notice is, ooh, very good. What you'll notice, just got some bubbles in it that shouldn't have. What you'll notice is the light source is relatively small, right? Pretty much a small point. Unlike, where's the rest of your equipment? Where'd it go? Should be here. Oh, it's right behind. They're right in front of me. Right in front of me. Don't start. Well, we'll show this in a minute. Unlike some LEDs, they're sort of like panels that have lots of little diodes. These have little small lights, which makes them a hard light. Means the edges of the shadows will be sharp. A hard light's very useful to have because you can make a hard light soft, but I can't take a soft light and make it hard. Okay? So these can be pretty valuable. If I look at this light, I know a couple things. I'm either going to have to power this with a battery or I'm going to have to plug it into an electrical socket. So if I look at the light, I know I'm going to have to connect it somehow. And there is one connection on this light. 5-pin connector. So I got to find a 5-pin cable. So now this is always an adventure. Well, that's certainly not. And we get to the bottom and there never was one. 5 and 5. Okay, so that means if I hook this into here. Yeah, fits like a brick. I now need to find a 5-pin connection to hook this to. I start looking in here at things. Got another light. Got this thing. Battery charger, it says. Well, that's not what I'm looking for. And then I've got these. It's a power button, brightness and darkness. This is a control box. And there's something up here, it says output, right? So I need to get the electricity to come from somewhere through this to the light, so out of this. And it's a 5-pin connector. Okay. So now I've got a couple of things I can do here. This is a battery mount. And I notice I have a battery, right? So I could hook up the battery. But if I didn't have a battery, I've got some connections here on the bottom. Now I know that I'm going to have to plug into an electrical outlet, so I'm looking for something like that, right? And then I look on this end, and that's an interesting looking connector that looks awfully a lot like that. So what happens? Will that fit into there? Don't know. I'm not doing too good a job. Oh wait, there's not. Okay.
This
Now-
is like our version of Dora the Explorer.
That's right. Now I can plug it into power. Right? Who wants to set up a light stand?
I will.
So I am going to hook a battery up to this because we're going to be moving this light around for the time being.
Are there any smaller batteries?
Not for these. The 300 takes 2 of these to run it.
Two.
Which is why all of our kits have 1 of them. Yeah.
You can go grab you another 300.
No, I don't need it for the 300. We won't need the battery. Okay, you know how to do this part, right? Bring it on over here.
Oh, there it goes. How do you want it?
That's good for now. You gotta be able to reach to put this on anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Cables are kind of tangled here. Let's unhook this one. All right. So you make sure it goes all the way down, and then you tighten it in.
The first meal I had there.
Also, we have these reflectors. This will amplify the light, send it out in one particular direction. And it is what's called a Bowen's mount. Huh? And it does exactly what the cat did in reverse. You slide it in and you turn it and you click it. If you want barn doors, and why would you want barn doors?
For use walking.
No way.
To save the light.
Most barn doors have 4 bolts on them.
Yeah, but we're talking about the cave.
Yeah,
Don't worry, once I get in there, it's gonna be tip-top shape.
For now.
So this fits over the end of this reflector. You make sure that it's latched in and there's a little piece of a little metal spring here that you bring around and clips in, and there you go. All right,
Now it looks like out with real light.
now that light is set up. Okay. So let's hook up the control box.
You don't want to sandbag it or anything.
Not yet, because I'm going to be moving it. You're absolutely right. It should be done, but I'm actually going to be moving this around a bit. In fact, could we get this stuff kind of slid over that way and out of the way? Because that's going to be in our way. All right, let's see if we got everything hooked up together. Striking. There we go. All right. Now, unfortunately, there's not a really great way to hook this.
I don't like any of those that you're trying to do.
know.
Why don't you do the whole part?
Where? Up here? Well, because that's going to have to go way up, and I'm not going to be able to reach it.
I mean,
What
like-
whole part?
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when hanging them off. Come on, old man, you got this.
Now, the 300 has a way to attach this to, make sure it's really in there. Has a way to attach this.
Can't you also hang them off the C-stands as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like it either, but unless, I'll tell you what, somebody who needs to follow me around. Somebody needs to
Gotcha.
hold this and follow me around. So let's come over on this side. All right.
Okay.
Now, what we're going to be talking about next is direction and angle. That's the angle or the direction the light is to the subject. And what we have are a series of set points that create defined portrait setups. Okay? So one of the things we're going to be, we've got Emma right here. We're going to be going around Emma in a big circle. And points on this circle are all going to be established portrait settings. So the first thing I want to do for portrait settings is you almost always want the light to be a bit higher. So we're going way up. All right, can we kill the overheads?
Sorry.
You say saving,
The
yeah.
box in my pocket.
Okay. All right, I'm
You
gonna
say
bring this
saving.
a little closer. All right, that's actually really good where you are right now. I'm gonna put this light right in front of Emma. Now, I'm not filling in the shadows, so the shadows are a little dark for a lot of these settings, but it'll help you understand what we're looking at. Notice the shadow under Emma's nose. Goes straight down, right, and the shadow under her chin. Okay? If the light, this is Emma, and our camera's here, and she's looking this way, then we put the light right here. This is paramount, or it's often called glamour, or it's often called butterfly lighting.
That's a lot of words.
Yes, it is. It's called paramount because Marlene Dietrich was lit this way by Joseph von Sternberg in the movies at Paramount, and there it is. It's glamour because it's been adapted into glamour photography, and it's butterfly because of the shape of that shadow under Emma's nose. Now again, this is not glamour lighting right now because we would want to soften up the shadows, we do all sorts of things, but this is the direction the light goes in order to be this way. If we start going around in a circle, we get to just about here. We have got the shadow of the nose is now moving off to the side, and we've got a bit of the side of the face over here shadowed. This is loop lighting. Okay? Nothing magical about any of these, just a shorthand to discuss. And our subjects move, right? If Emma looks at me, she's just moved into a different lighting scenario. If she looks over there at Hania, she's now in a different lighting scenario, right? So these are just kind of steps. These are just a way of beginning. Okay? We keep going around. We watch the shadow of Emma's nose, and it comes over here and it closes, so that there's that triangle under one eye. What do we call that? You got the right first letter.
Yeah, it's like Rem.
It's Rembrandt. Yes.
See, I know.
You got it. When you hear about Rembrandt lighting, that's all it is. It's that triangle under the eye. Now here's the other thing I want you to notice I've been doing. Since Emma's looking off camera, one side of Emma's face is shorter than the other. We've got a broad side and we've got a short side. Okay? side's broader, I can see her ear. This side's shorter, I can't see her ear. Okay? Our key light, if we think of this as a key light, is on the short side of her face so far. 90% of the lighting setups that you will see are going to be having the key light on the short side of the face. It's going to be short side lighting. Why? I don't know. I think by emphasizing the shadow side of the face, you give it a little more sense of depth. But you look at these, and you look at the video, and I'll post it later, and you go around and you see if you feel like it's a difference in terms of being on the short side or the broad side. Okay, if we keep going until we throw 1/2 of Emma's face into shadow and 1/2 lit. This is split lighting. All right, let's keep going. Come around here so that only a little edge of Emma's face is lit. We might say a rim, right? This is rim lighting. Let's keep going. If we go directly behind Emma, we've got backlighting. And we know that in a 3-point lighting setup, right, theoretically we have a key light, which is our main light, a fill light, which fills in the shadows, and a backlight. Now, one of the things you may look at this, and there are a couple of issues. One is the stand's in the shot. You wouldn't really want that. So if you were going to do backlighting, we would have to find a way to mount the light without the stand being in the shot. There are a couple ways to do that.
C-stand.
A C-stand, which would allow the stand to be here and the light to be out there on the end of one of those arms, right? Also some kind of rig that would allow us to hang it from the ceiling. There are lots of things like that. The other problem you're seeing right now, though, is that everything is washed out. The reason for that is the light is shining directly down the barrel of the lens. So in circumstances like this, you would want to shadow the light, there we go, from the lens, and yet still have the backlight hitting your subject, right? I set one of these up once and left it there and realized I had blocked out the GoPro for the entire, I had nothing but black on the GoPro the whole time. All right, if we keep going, we're going to go back into the same setups. We're going to come around to this side, and we're going to get rim lighting. The rim lighting now, however, is on the broad side of the face instead of the short side of the face, if it matters. Keep coming around. Till we get split lighting. Back this up just a little bit. That's a little, a little severely. Okay? Now again, that's the broad side. These are a little hot. There we go. Okay. So you can judge if you think this feels differently, having the split side, having the lit side on the broad side or on the short side. We keep coming around. We've got Rembrandt lighting. Now, it's not doing a lot because we really don't see that side of the face very well. So almost always Rembrandt lighting is short-sighted light. Keep coming. We can get to our loop lighting, but once again, that shadow side is so narrow we're barely even seeing it. And then if we just keep going, we're going to end up right back at Paramount. Okay, now once again, nothing magical about any of these, but it's a good shorthand. You start, this is how we're going to, next week when we start doing lighting, I'm going to say set your first light up in Rembrandt lighting and you'll know exactly what to do, right? Yeah. All right, that's really all there is to direction, with one exception. Everything we have done has been from above. Right? That's a more natural scenario. Most of the time in life, our lights are above us. They're in the ceilings, they're in the sky, right? So this is more natural. You could, you can do some of these setups. Let's go back over here to loop for a second, right? If that setup is lower, a little air in there. That was not me, I promise.
But that did not sound good though.
Yeah, no it didn't. All right, we can keep going down. Which will force us to tilt the light up.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's air in that one. There's air there too. Let me. Okay. It's a little bit of a different effect, right? You don't really get the portrait perspective of it when you light it. But one of the things that is something that's kind of exceptional to do, and since this light doesn't get that hot, I can actually do this. What's wrong with me? Low light has a tendency to be pretty exceptional, right? Now, the other thing to remember about lighting can be motivated or it can be unmotivated. So a shot like this, if I wanted to say this would motivate it, I would say, okay, there's a car parked there with its headlights on it. So there's a motivation for why that light's coming from there. She's in a bar and there are lights along the edge of the bar. That's why the light's below her face, right? Or we can just say it's there for effect. It's unmotivated. You ever see movies shot in dark caves? Where the hell did the light come from? Well, you gotta be able to see, so they put light in there and it's completely unmotivated. Okay. Can still get up. Good sign. Can still get to my feet. All right. So just tap that button. All right, let's get the overheads on just for a second. All right. That's direction and angle. That's number 4. So I need a couple of volunteers to set up another one of these over there. Over there. So Emma, for what we're going to do now, you can actually be looking kind of straight at the camera.
Oh, great.
Could you grab me a couple of chairs? Yeah, pretty. Set it up kind of just like that one, and exactly on that side of her face. We'll probably have to plug it in one of these rooms, so we maybe. Yeah, but I don't think it works. I'm pretty sure it does not work. Yeah. Nope, this is it. That's all I need.
You want barn doors on this one?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's put barn doors on.
You guys get the 3.
Thank you.
Oh, the 3.
Where do you want the open barn door at? On the left.
It doesn't matter.
Maybe put it on the.
Nothing matters. Okay, let's take this off the battery so you don't have to sit down.
There's a thing to press.
Wow, that's long. So, we can pop this off. So there is a release.
Yeah, it's like this.
Yeah.
Crumble, get the light.
Why did I look right at them?
It didn't lighten at all.
Striking, hello.
I wanted it to be a surprise.
Remember one time
Put your glasses on.
on the set this weekend, Wyatt was like striking, and I looked right at the camera, and right at the light, and he was like, "Dude, don't look at it. Don't look at it." It's like a monk.
I'm looking at it,
Gotta-
I'm looking
gotta
at
look.
it.
It's like someone yells striking and it's like, my first instinct is to look.
Yeah, so there's one that's a little bigger that goes in there, but I couldn't tell which one it was. And twist it.
Why do I
Clicks,
keep
that's it.
yawning?
Now, we don't need to do anything except plug it in.
My favorite. That's why I wore my favorite t-shirt today.
Mm-hmm. Here to model.
You okay? All right. Yeah, maybe that one is on. That makes more sense. Or the lack of a door.
There's no song and dance.
This power cable is very long. It might actually go ahead and reach in there without an extension cord. It's really, really long. So that's going to connect to your control box. Do you have your control box out here yet? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, these are, that's the power. You gotta get a dude for.
And then twist it so it clicks. You got it.
Good jeans.
I got them from Walmart.
Yeah.
All right, let's see how far this stretches and see if we can do this.
I also
Now,
got this
again,
strip from
as I
Walmart.
say all the time, if we were doing this for real, we'd want to cover this with carpet or tape it down just to make it safe. We don't really have time for that, and since almost none of you are moving. Okay. Now, color. Different lights come in different kinds, different colors. We define and describe those colors by color temperature, by degrees Kelvin. Okay? If we have a continuum, and over on this end, light is getting increasingly orange or warmer because we perceive orange light as warm. If you see a room bathed in golden light, we perceive it as being a warm, kind of inviting environment.
Golden.
On the other side, we have blue,
Fluorescent.
which is only getting cooler.
Gross.
We also perceive that as cold when we see it. Now, along this continuum, right around here, between 3,200 degrees Kelvin and 3,600 degrees Kelvin is what we call tungsten. Right? That's what those airy lights are. That's what those incandescent lights are. And that tells us those are orange lights. As we go towards this end, when we get to between 5,600 degrees Kelvin and 6,000 degrees Kelvin, we are looking at daylight. Daylight is inherently blue. Around the middle here, by the way, around 4,000 degrees, is fluorescent. Although it depends greatly on how old or how new the fluorescent light is. Okay, you've got the controller. Can we strike it?
Striking.
All right, and now that we're doing color, we get to change the monitor. How exciting. For real?
It's also on the biggest PlayStation.
Oh, yeah. It does. Yeah, right.
PS3.
When there was a guy in the shop and
Another Stevie Cole, bro. Yeah, you know your TV old and the color all that time.
All right, let's kill the overheads, please. Okay. Now, remember that these lights said, all right, they were daylight, right? Said D. The camera doesn't know. It can guess. You can put it on auto white balance, it'll kind of try to guess. But if you know, I know these are 5,600 degrees Kelvin, what I can do is get rid of that. Stop. There. I can go down here. And of course, we're dependent right now on the monitor being a certain, being correct, which I don't know that we can really count on. But I can go in here and I can, if I can hit the button right, I can tell it that we're shooting under light that's 5,600. And as you can see, Emma's skin tone looks nice and the board looks white. Right? Now, if I give the camera incorrect information, let's say I mistakenly think these are tungsten lights, and I tell the camera that instead of 5,600, we're looking at 3,400. What the camera is going to do, thinking that the light is much more orange than it is blue the image up, make it bluer. Right? And we can see right now, Emma looks bluer and increasingly bored.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding, it's okay. And you can see the board is, the actual board, B-O-A-R-D, is also turning to a bluer tone. If we keep going, if we just keep telling it, the camera, that this is more and more orange light, telling it we're at 2,000 Kelvin, we can turn everything quite a severe shade of blue. One of the reasons that board's not good, I've got this a little too hot. Okay. All right. We can also go the other way. We can go up to where it's correct at 5,600, but if we keep going, to 150,000, right? Everything gets increasingly orange because we're telling the camera the light is blue, so it's trying to correct. So the first thing to understand about this color temperature issue is the ability to correct your color, to make sure that white looks like white, that the light looks like it's a white light. So let's put this back to 3,200. Let's pretend that we're shooting under, or that we think we're shooting under tungsten lights. This takes a while. Let's go to 34. Okay. Let's strike that light, if you will. Just point it at Emma.
Striking.
All right. I need the light meter. And it's over here. Duh. It's much more likely that I have no idea where something is than I actually know where it is, so I just evolved to that. Okay. So once again, the light meter is a device that if I tell it what ISO I'm shooting at and what shutter speed I'm shooting at, let's see, we have this right. Gotta go to 60, because this doesn't have enough settings. Okay. And I point it, is this light even pointed at them? There we go. Is it moving? It feels like it's moving. All right. Read this light. It's telling me 3.2. So I'm going to put the do you want to do that? Mm-hmm. Put the camera on 3.2. And let's equal these out. So can you start slowly dimming that? Do you see where the dimmer is? Yes. That's 3.6. That's 3. Right there, 3.2. Both sides of her face should be equally lit. They're both also kind of equally blue. It's not too. Let's get some light. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just staring.
Now, and I'm gonna bring this down a bit. Maybe when I'm not standing in front of it. Okay. That does not look even.
It's probably because we pointed it at her face. Like
And it
this
wasn't
one.
before?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going then. What did I do with the light? I just had it. Here it is.
Also the distance.
Put it around your neck. Yeah, but all we have to do is dim it until they match. So let's see where we are now. Yeah, we're at 4.5, so keep dimming. 4, 3, 6, 3, 2, right there. Okay, those look pretty even. I think some of this just has to do with, yeah. Okay. Let's say we want to correct a light. We've got a daylight light, but we want it to look like tungsten. Because all the rest of our things being lit by lamps in a room, and all those lamps are tungsten lamps, right? Some lights will let us change the color temperature on the lights, right? I think we've got a 300 over there we can do that on at some point. Some lights won't. So what we have are corrective. The only thing is we never know what's actually in these things. We have Roscoe color correction. Okay? So right now the camera thinks we're shooting tungsten light. We can take these daylights or at least one of them. So these gels come in, and we don't have ours labeled, so it's a little hard to tell. You have to do it by eye. They come in full, which means it fully compensates. They come in half, which means it little compensates, and they come in quarter, that means it compensates a lot less. This looks like a full, so it should pretty much turn that side of her face incredibly orange. Why did it do that? We set it 3400. It should be. Well, this is a little bit whiter. That is not what I expected to happen, and not what's happened every other time I've done it. Maybe that's a little too much. That's not even orange.
I was about to say, what's
It needs to be orange, it just needs to be not quite that thick. I thought I saw one. Yeah, and this is really running into trouble because here. All right, he's taking half the gels over here. Let me get new wine. Hold on. Well, now you guys know what Tuesday feels like. I know this is full, so this should work. So look at the board. Right, the board's a pretty good white. Over on this side. I get confused where I am. Still confused where I am. All right, there we go. So the board looks pretty white. Emma's skin tone looks pretty natural. The other side still is looking a little blue. Right?
Is it possible to flip the screen?
Do what?
Right here, flip the screen because it's flipped. You know, the watercolors here and the.
No, it's just, I don't, not that I know. I can do it post-production. I don't know how to do it here. It's just because it's not really flipped. It's just, you're on the opposite side, so it looks, yeah, I know, believe me, it confuses me constantly. Well, anyway, we don't need that because now, let's tell the camera that we're shooting at daylight. So the orange side became much more orange and the blue side turned white. Okay? So that's corrective, right? That is, my light doesn't look white and I want it to look white. And we know there are other ways to do it. There are buttons you can push on the camera. We can go to auto white balance. We'll probably give you a decent accounting, right? We can point the camera at a whiteboard and push a certain button, it'll set it to that particular light. There's also then the creative aspect to this, right? So maybe we want everything to feel warm. Or we want everything to feel cold. Or we want one particular light to feel warm or feel cold. And we do that by setting the camera to certain settings and using certain lights, often with certain gels. Okay? Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. Now, one of the reasons this is something that is talked about so often is you'll often find yourself in a situation where you have mixed color temperature lights. You're shooting in a room and there's sunlight coming in the window and it's blue, and you've got a lamp turned on and it's orange. That may look great. You may love that, right? Or you may want them to match. If you want them to match, you've got to somehow turn that lamp blue, or you've got to cover that window with orange gel so that you adjust one light to match the other. Now that's one aspect of this, right? The other aspect of this is that we react to different colors in different ways. And it's somewhat largely dependent on the circumstances, but, hold on a second.
Invisible green. There's a certain shade of green that they use at the Disney parks to hide stuff.
Oh yeah.
And just like don't
I know that Disney World
It's actually really funny. Whenever I went there, I got
We have a
Disney,
very strong reaction, and that's more of a pink than a red.
but I only went once.
But we have a pretty strong reaction to red. Let me see.
Pink is red?
Well,
It is. Just like red.
Well, it's kind of like how brown isn't actually a color, it's just a dark
There's a
one.
really red one in here somewhere.
But you know how like you can add white to red and everything? Can you add black?
Turn this into a complete mess now.
That's not how colors.
Big enough?
That's not how you work.
Here we go. This is red.
Well, I mean, because it's kind of like thinking about it in light. You combine all of the colors, you get white.
That's right.
You get brown.
Look at that. In with white?
With light.
Ooh, gas murder.
Well, now,
Oh, you're
here
talking
it
about
is.
like on light
Close.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, white is like the combination of all the.
I don't know why I'm so itchy.
Color is different.
Right.
Color.
So we can play around. You can decide to be Dario Argento. Who's Dario Argento? Somebody. Come on, somebody. Somebody.
Richard isn't here.
Somebody. All right. And use colors in a sort of a subjective, expressionistic way. You can do Euphoria. Right?
Take a show.
Right? Now, let's kill that light for a second. Now, another color that we react pretty strongly to is green.
Oh, that's good.
That's blue.
There's a bunch of green over here.
That's like
Let's get something slightly thicker.
Green is my favorite color.
Now, the right shade of green can be kind of verdant and it can feel like life, but more often than not, the kind of green that we see is going to kind of feel kind of sickly and like rot. So,
Evil.
let's strike that light, please.
It's like teal.
That's interesting. It's kind of Christmassy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
All right. Can we kill the red light? So if you've seen The Matrix, or if you've seen Vertigo, this kind of green kind of suggests something that's not right, something that's kind of sickly. Right? I can pop it out just a little bit more. Right? We're telling the camera these are white lights, so any color that we add to them, they're going to turn that color. So you can literally, we could go through one of these kits, and we can just keep changing the colors until we have the feeling that we want. Yellow's going to feel different than green's going to feel different than red. You also face the motivation factor, right? If you're trying to do something that has any sense of realism, which Dario Argento, when he makes those Italian horror films, couldn't care less about. There's just red lights for no reason at all. If you want this to be motivated, you got to come up with a reason why the light is green. There's in Vertigo, for example, there's a neon sign outside the window with green letters on it. In Euphoria, they're constantly in clubs that have all this kind of lighting going on. For the red light, again, you might want to come up with some kind of motivation. Okay. We could spend an entire semester on color theory, and we're not going to. All right. So, that's intensity, that's quality, that's contrast, that's direction, and that's color. Any questions at this point? Okay, the last thing that we're going to deal with is shape. Shape is all about creating shadows. Shape is about making sure the light goes where you want it to go and doesn't go where you don't want it to go. I love throwing things on the floor. I love it. All right. We're going to go back into that earlier setup that we had. Okay. We should have put, by the way, sandbags on all these, but you guys seem to be on top of them a little bit. So your first line of defense, right, is going to be barn doors. If I, for example, don't want that back wall to be as bright as it is, I can bring the barn door in. If I want some light bouncing off the ceiling and hitting her, I can let it or I can cut it off. Even, let's get past this. Actually, let me do this. Hold on. I can even take part of the light off the subject. Right? So that we get a little bit more of a focus on the face. Right? So that's the first thing with shape. Now the barn doors are very close to the light, so the edges are going to be pretty soft. It's not going to be really, really precise. If I want to be more precise, and I'm not going to bother to set it up, I would be setting up C-stands, and I would be taking flags where I can be much more precise, right? I can even do, and you'll notice there's a little bit of a double shadow there because that's not really a pinpoint. Actually, it's being caused by this reflector. We can get rid of it. I'm pretty sure that's what's causing it. Hold on. Not even warm. Let's see if I'm right about that. Yeah. Right? So we can even be pretty, and the further I get away from the light, the more precise I can be. I can shape it like this, or I can shape it like that. I can also, again, I can take light off of the subject a bit. It's going to be a little more precise. Now, the other thing is that you can create shapes. So if one of the things we've been talking about is, and we've talked about this in class today, is that we don't really necessarily like a background to be kind of flat and evenly lit. We have these things called cucalorises, or cookies. Come in any kind of shape. This is a typical sort of abstract. If I can remember, there's a horror movie from the 1960s. Every wall looks like that. In every single shot. It's really amazingly annoying. But if you get this close enough, right, it can just become kind of an abstract way to just break that background up a bit. We can even kind of break the light up on our subject a bit as well, right? And it becomes just something that makes sure that that background is not solid. Often got into fights with grips, because grips, who are the people who do all the modifying of the light, love to go into people's trees and cut limbs out of their trees, because you put a limb in front of a light like this, and it gives you a very natural kind of way to break up the light, and people react very badly to you cutting limbs out of their trees. I can tell you that from experience. But this is kind of abstract. We can also suggest a source or an environment.
Oh yeah, now it's going.
Let me go a little bit this way. I go this way. There we go. And again, those shadows can be shadows that we cast on our subject. That we don't want that. Now again, these shadows are very dark because we filled in nothing, right? But that's all shape is. You know, it's a shadow. I'm gonna make a puppet or something. Questions? Okay, let's get the overheads on. Hey, if you don't mind, thank you.